What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for The Flash, Season 4, Episode 21, titled Harry and the Harrisons, which is very similar to Episode, I think, 6 of this season, which was When Harry Met Harry, which are they're both parody titles of movies with Harry instead of whoever is supposed to be in the title. And just like that episode, I didn't like the storyline that the episode is named after, which is the Council of Harrisons this time around. Last time it was the Council of Harrys, which was kind of boring, and really, like, the people on the council did not feel like human beings that would exist in real life, so it just didn't work. And the same thing with this time. This time it's the same thing, but the people are just, instead of being smart, they're emotional, they're therapists, kind of, and that really doesn't work with the, I mean, it works with the storyline, but the storyline is just, I don't like it. I really don't like the storyline of Harry becoming stupid. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The same thing with Caitlin losing her powers. It feels really pointless, which I will talk about later in the review. But the Council of Harrisons are nothing. I honestly barely remember them. There was this one French guy. Then there was one of the guys from the Council of Harrys, which I don't even remember his name. And there was one other guy, I think a German guy, and that's really all I remember about them. So they're really not memorable in the slightest. And they don't add anything to the episode because they're just not anything special. These people do feel a lot more human. They're just a French guy, a German guy, and they're really like the same guys that has probably the most real out of the three of the Council of Harrys, or the four, because there was one wizard guy. But still, these guys just don't feel like real people. I mean, they do feel more real than those guys, but still, they don't feel like real people. So this Council of Wells is just really uninteresting, and it just doesn't add anything, and it feels like it just makes the episode feel filler. So and that's fine at episode 6, but episode 21, the third to last episode in the season, should not be a filler episode. And sure, it's not a filler episode at all. Really, it adds, well, I mean, it adds something with the Iris storyline, and that's really it. Iris storyline, and then Harry coming to the conclusion that that DeVoe and his wife aren't together anymore, which could have been done. Both those things could have been done in one scene each. So there's really no need for this entire episode. So except for those two things that happen, this episode feels really filler, and this Council of Harrisons does not help it in the slightest. And then there was the second storyline of the episode with Caitlin, and this was the main storyline of the episode, really, even though the title isn't named after it. It still was this main storyline of the episode, and it was the main, that, along with the Council of Harrisons, which I wasn't excited for, was the main reason I was not excited for this episode. And the main reason was Amunet Black, because she was a very uninteresting character. Like, not even uninteresting, she was a bad villain. Like, obviously not bad as in, like, evil villain. She was just a bad villain. She was just so cheesy, and her powers were not interesting. I said that her powers could have been so much more interesting. Like, all she did was make a hand out of her metal and then throw it. And in this episode, I think they might have listened to that. Like, not to me, I don't think, but maybe other people complained about it. A lot of people complained about it, maybe, and they added stuff in this episode. Like, they added, she put all her metal around somebody's face, trying to choke him, and then used the metal to fly. But I think still, it just wasn't enough to make her interesting past her really cringy performance from the actress. I really don't like this character. So for all the villains this year to bring back as a recurring villain, they chose Amunet Black, and it really annoys me because she's just not a good villain. And this storyline with Caitlin as well is just not good at all. I don't like, she lost her powers for absolutely no reason. The only reason I could think of is the Flash writers wanted to cut the team in half, so that they need to call other people for help, like Gypsy and like Citizen Cold and like Amunet Black, because that's 3 episodes in a row where they called somebody for help. So that's the only reason they did that, in my opinion, just to lengthen the season so they could fit in more episodes, which does not work, especially this late in the season. They could have done this earlier in the season. Extending a storyline past what it needs to be in the beginning of the season is fine, just because it doesn't take away from the main storyline of the season that really has to come into place at the end. But in this season, for some reason, they did 3 episodes in a row that really, really lengthened the episode, lengthened the storyline past what it needed to be, and because of that, the result is not good. And this Caitlyn storyline of her losing her powers feels really pointless because they connected, and this storyline of her desperately wanting to get her back does not make me feel like they connected further, because they connected in that episode sending each other notes. I think the notes was all they needed to make us think. And also that they hinted that Killer Frost cared about Caitlyn. That's all they needed to show that these two characters, even though they're really the same person, care about each other. They didn't need to separate them just for Caitlyn to be desperate to get her back. They did not need to do that. And it's very similar to, this might be a spoiler to Avengers Infinity War, so if you haven't seen it, maybe like pause the video and skip to this time slot. So in Avengers Infinity War, Bruce Banner is obviously in the movie, and the Hulk doesn't show up after like 10 minutes in, and he has this fight scene with Thanos and never shows up again. I feel like this is very similar. I didn't like it in Infinity War. It's probably the worst part of the movie, the fact that he didn't show up, and I don't like what they're doing here with Caitlyn, with Killer Frost never showing up, because honestly Killer Frost is the most interesting part of the character of Caitlyn Snow, so to have her not show up and for really no reason really bothers me, and there's really no way, there's no reason they needed to do this. And the third storyline of the episode, and which is surprisingly, well, it's not surprisingly the best, but it is, like, I didn't even know it was in the episode, but just going off like 3 storylines, the characters in this one had the worst character, but it somehow became the best storyline, and that was the one with Iris, who published this story on Devoe, and it was just only like 1 or 2 scenes, like at the beginning and at the end, but it was the best storyline of the episode, just out of the fact that the other 2 kind of sucked, and this one wasn't bad, in my opinion. I like the fact that Iris is getting back into journalism, just because that's what her character should be, just a journalist, and the love interest of Barry Allen on the show. That's all she should be. She should not be a member of Team Flash, and not be a leader of Team Flash specifically. So, the fact that she's getting back into journalism is actually pretty cool, in my opinion. And also the fact that she published this paper on Devoe is honestly, it's just amazing. It's just the most interesting part of the episode, and it's really, like I said earlier in the review, it's the only part of the episode, along with the Harry kind of thing of somehow revealing or figuring out, even though that did not make any sense the way he figured it out, but he figured out that Devoe or Clifford and Marlize aren't together anymore, and that and this storyline were the only things that mattered throughout the rest of the season. Maybe Caitlyn, like, discovering how she can get back Killer Frost, but that could have just not happened at all, and it has nothing to do with Devoe. So I think that those 2 things, those 2 scenes, like 3 scenes in the episode that had anything to do with the main plot of the storyline, which is why this episode was really not a good episode, specifically for the 21st episode of the season, but at least this storyline was the best of the bunch. One thing I actually did kind of like about this episode was the lighthearted tone, and I like that because it just feels fun to watch a lighthearted episode, but it doesn't really work with the rest or the last couple episodes, because the Ralph died and they had to deal with that, and they did that by making the tone of the show becoming more dark throughout the last couple episodes. And that tone completely shifted with this episode, because it just felt like a more lighthearted episode. It also felt like they completely forgot Ralph's death. And sure, it happened a couple episodes ago, but they didn't address it once. The tone completely changed in this episode, and that is a negative and a plus, because like I said, it's a plus because it just made for a easier watch, just a more lighthearted episode, just easier to watch. But it just did not work with the rest of, like, the last couple episodes' tone. And this is the third to last episode in the season. I gotta emphasize that more, because this is the third to last episode in the season. There are only 2 episodes left for them to wrap up all the storylines. Wrap up the Devoe storyline. Wrap up I think, in my opinion, the elongated Matt storyline. Probably him coming back to life. Wrap up the Caitlyn storyline. Wrap up the Harry storyline of him becoming dumb. Wrap up probably the Mystery Girl storyline, and the fact that Cecile is probably going to give birth in the season finale, just because the date the Mystery Girl said was the season finale's date. So they have to wrap up a lot of things in the next 2 episodes that they should have probably wrapped up in the last couple episodes, instead of having these filler plots and filler episodes that really, it's really this episode mainly that was filler. that really don't need to be there, because like I said, like I keep on saying, there's only 3 scenes in this entire show, in this entire episode, that had anything to do with the main plot of the storyline. That was the scene where Harry discovered that Marlise and Clifford aren't together anymore, and the first scene where Iris and Barry are talking about this paper they're going to publish, and the last scene, I think it's the last scene where Iris actually publishes the paper. That's really... And also, she has all these responses. They figure out that DeVoe can't hide anymore. That's it. That's all that mattered into the season storyline. So this episode was definitely filler, and on top of that, very uneventful. There's really not much. Like, I think it was just like Caitlin and Amelia Black trying to get the medal, and then they don't get it, and then Caitlin figures out that she has some other way, and then there's the council, and it's just such an uneventful episode and such a filler episode that I cannot give it a good score. So I'll give this episode a 6.7 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.